Season's greetings and a huge thank you from the Allen Lund Company. To all the drivers out there delivering holiday cheer across our great country, thank you.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Remember that new rule out of FMCSA that cuts down the state emergency waiver window from 30 days to 14? It drew a lot of pushback. OOIDA has asked the agency to reconsider, and so too has North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. He's going to tell us why he has a problem with the new rule on today's show and what he thinks ought to be done. Then we all know that trucking tends to run in the blood. A parent passes down the trucking bug to their child and the cycle continues. Doug and Harry Smith are a perfect example of that. We'll have a good chat with the father-son duo about their love for trucking and how it's impacted their family through the years. And finally, we'll close things out by looking at the National Coalition on Truck Parking. They're holding a meeting Tuesday, and OOIDA Director of Legislative Affairs Bryce Mungin is presenting. He joins us with a look at what's on the agenda tomorrow while looking back at the coalition's accomplishments over recent years. All that and more on today's show. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. More than 80% of motor carriers have experienced predatory towing practices. This according to a recent survey by the American Transportation Research Institute. ATRI released the new report, which examines the causes and countermeasures of predatory heavy-duty towing. According to crash-related towing records, 29.8% of invoices include excessive rates or unwarranted additional charges. ATRI says this report sheds a light on the sources of the problem and paths forward for addressing it by both regulators and trucking fleets. To view the report, you can visit our website at landline.media. Meanwhile, the city of Memphis has suspended the license of a towing company that's been at the center of numerous complaints in recent months. A1's Towing and Hauling won't be allowed to boot or tow vehicles in the city for 30 days. The city's Transportation Commission made the move last week in response to truck drivers who said the company was illegally booting and towing semis from area truck stops, then charging thousands of dollars to return them. An attorney for A1's Towing told WREG-TV that the hearing last week was flawed. The company intends to appeal. WREG-TV submitted a request to the city of Memphis and found that nearly 24 truckers or trucking companies from around the country had filed official complaints against A1 in the city over the last year. In September, the Arkansas Towing and Recovery Board suspended A1's booting license in the state for 60 days over similar concerns from several truck drivers. The truck driver and trucking company being blamed for causing a deadly bus crash in Ohio last month had previously been cited for defective brakes. ABC News reports that Mid-State Systems was flagged for brake issues in 2020, 2021, and 2023. A couple of those citations happened with Jacob McDonald behind the wheel. McDonald has been identified as the truck driver involved in the November 14th crash on I-70 in Licking County. The Ohio Department of Public Safety says he was following an SUV too closely moments before hitting that vehicle, causing the chain reaction crash that involved a charter bus and other vehicles. 6 people were killed. The crash is still under investigation. The court battle between Berkshire Hathaway and Pilot Flying J has escalated. Reuters reports that Warren Buffett's company filed a countersuit against the owners of the truck stop chain last week. The suit claims that the Haslam family tried to bribe at least 15 executives at Pilot with millions of dollars in hopes they would inflate the company's profits this year. Doing that would force Berkshire to pay more for the Haslam's remaining 20% stake in the company. The countersuit comes after the original lawsuit filed by the Haslam family, which has accused Berkshire Hathaway of changing accounting practices to understate Pilot's earnings. The cost of driving through parts of Manhattan is about to go up. New York City officials last week announced plans for congestion towing for vehicles entering the central business district below 60th Street. For heavy-duty trucks, the fee would be as high as $36. For passenger vehicles, as high as $15. New York City officials expect the program to generate $1 billion in revenue each year, money that would go toward road improvements. They also expect it to reduce traffic and improve air quality. The plan is not set in stone, however. The city will open up the issue to public comments in the coming weeks. If the issue moves forward, the congestion fee could go into effect as soon as the spring. That's also if legal battles don't derail the process. New Jersey has filed a lawsuit over the plan. The Garden State argues that New York City's plan will lead to more traffic and pollution in their state as drivers try to avoid paying the fee. The state of Connecticut is pulling the plug on plans to ban gas-powered vehicle sales by 2035. Governor Ned Lamont withdrew the plan last week after it was clear it wouldn't get through the legislature. The proposal was based on California's clean vehicle standards. A number of other states have followed suit, including New Jersey this month, but it's back to the drawing board for Connecticut backers of the change. A popular truck stop outside Bozeman, Montana is closing down. A number of local news outlets are reporting that the Broadway Flying J Travel Plaza off of Interstate 90 in Belgrade has been sold off. No word on who purchased the property or what they plan to do with it. A company official told the Longview News Journal that they sold off the location because it was a difficult market to operate in. $1.5 billion in grant funding has been issued by the U.S. Department of Transportation. The Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability in Equity grant program aims to help states complete critical freight and passenger transportation infrastructure projects. According to a release, the U.S. DOT must allocate 50% of grant funding to projects in rural areas, with the remaining 50% going to projects in urban areas. The deadline to apply is February 28th. Efforts are underway in North Carolina to make roads and highways safer. CBS 17 reports that the state's DOT Secretary Joey Hopkins said they're partnering with the Highway Patrol to install flashing blue lights on electronic signs and vehicles to get the attention of drivers going through work zones.
But we can put those out there to kind of give some of that advance warning to help people understand what they're coming up towards.
Technology is being tested to detect wrong-way drivers.
Alert not just the motorists that they're doing something wrong, and they may not even realize it because they're just disoriented or maybe in driving under the influence type thing, but also to alert law enforcement that, hey, there's a problem and it's right here.
All this in an effort to make traveling safer for everyone. Wisconsin's Department of Transportation is warning of a scam. Some people have recently received a text message from what appears to be the state's DOT or Department of Motor Vehicles that promises a refund. The Wisconsin DOT said it's aware of phishing attempts where scammers claim to be the state DOT or DMV to get recipients to click on a fraudulent link that will share their personal information. The agency is advising anyone who receives the text or email to not respond or engage with the sender. And finally, a stretch of highway in Ohio was closed last week after boxes of chocolate and caramel spilled all over the roadway. UPI reports that westbound Interstate 90 in Lake County was shut down on Thursday morning after two semi-trucks collided. One of the trucks was carrying a load of chocolate and caramel candy. No injuries were reported. Local fire crews had to be called in to clean up. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. A reminder, if a carrier, shipper, receiver, or broker coerces you to violate any regulations, you don't have to sit and take it. In fact, you're encouraged to file a complaint with the National Consumer Complaint Database. You've got a few ways to do that, either by calling 1-888-DOT-SAFT or by going online and doing it there. Coming up next, we'll be joined by the governor of North Dakota for a talk about emergency waivers. FMCSA cut the waiver window down by more than half recently, and that's something that Governor Doug Burgum is pushing back against. He says it's a classic case of government overreach that takes the power away from the states. Governor Burgum makes his case right here on Landline Now, right after this short commercial break.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now. Welcome back. The FMCSA recently issued a rule that limits the length of emergency exemptions from the hours of service to 14 days, down from 30. OOIDA has objected to the order, and so has Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota. I talked recently with the governor about the rule, his objections, and what's next. We're talking, of course, about this rule change on the part of FMCSA regarding emergency orders. I wonder if we can start broadly, Governor. What about the rule change do you object to?
First of all, Mark, thanks for everything you do to advocate for independent truckers. It's so important to our economy and so important to our country. And I'd say the thing that I object to is, let's start with the top, which is federal overreach. I mean, the idea that the federal government thinks that it can just come up with these ever more restrictive and heavy red tape, heavy-handed regulations when there isn't any there's no basis that in terms of what problem they're trying to solve from a safety standpoint or any other standpoint. So again, part of this is just what is, life as a governor of North Dakota is constantly pushing back on the federal government overreach. I think we're battling 28 different rulemaking efforts right now. This is one of them. But again, we're having the flexibility and the authority. I mean, the 50 states created the federal government, not the other way around. That's very, very clear. It's in the 10th Amendment in the Constitution that the states delegated certain responsibilities to the federal government, and the rest of those are for the states, or for the people. But yet what we see is this, constant encroachment of more and more federal regulation onto the states and onto the private sector when there may not even be a basis there for that to exist. So it starts with the first thing, which is let's just use some common sense here. And the way that we've been applying the hours of service waivers in North Dakota for emergencies and for moving agricultural products around in a large rural state, makes common sense. We do it, we execute it, our operators drive safely. There's not a problem. So again, sometimes you have to ask yourself, the federal government, what problem are they trying to fix? In this case, I don't even see a problem that exists. It certainly doesn't exist in our state.
I'm wondering, you mentioned their agriculture. What sectors of the state's economy or the state's people could be affected by this change?
Well, one of the things that we have in our rural state, and understand that the size of North Dakota, we're the size of all 6 New England states. So think of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut. That's the state of North Dakota. And across that, very rural, but highly productive, both in terms of energy and in terms of agriculture. When we take the crop off in the fall, particularly as we become more of a corn and soybean state, and among the nation's largest producer of over a dozen agricultural products, if we get a late blizzard in the fall and we got a wet crop, and people have to dry that grain before they store it, we got to haul propane. And propane, when you need it, you have to have it, and it can come in a period of 3 or 4 weeks during harvest, where we have to move a lot of propane because there's not pipelines to move that propane around. It has to be hauled by truck. That's an example that can come up relatively frequently. I mean, other parts of the country, maybe they've got the pipeline infrastructure to move products like that. But in our state, this is why we have to have flexibility on a state-by-state basis for governors, because every state's different. Every state has a different amount of infrastructure. But if we're not hauling that propane to help dry those crops in the grain dryers, you put wet grain in a bin, I mean, you end up losing your crop. That's a key example of where states can differ, and why we've got to have the flexibility residing at the state level under the jurisdiction of governors, not under the federal government.
You talked there about the agricultural emergency order regarding propane. Are there other situations where you've issued a waiver?
Yeah, absolutely. We've issued waivers during my 7 years, I think 28 times. 19 of those involved waivers that were longer than 14 days. Some of these are related to harvest related. Some of them are related to when we've had snow emergencies, flood emergencies. Sometimes even when it's related to moving food products, including milk for school kids. I mean, there's in case the Biden heard, there actually is a shortage of CDL drivers in our country. It's a chronic issue. We've got a lot of people that worked in that industry for decades of their life doing a great job, and they're retiring. And so just like all industries, whether it's nurses or school teachers or you name it, when we've got baby boomers retiring and we don't have the workforce coming in into those roles at a time when we've got demand for transportation needs, you're going to have a shortage. And so some of these cases, the capacity to, when you start restricting drivers' hours and saying, we'll just have somebody else do it, if there isn't somebody else, you can have supply chain issues that can cascade quite quickly and hit a lot of industries. And of course, I already, with the first example with propane, I mean, the intersection of energy and agriculture comes quickly and directly in our state. And it's important for those our two largest industries, energy and agriculture, can't operate unless we've got CDL drivers that are qualified and able to do this. And all the executive orders that we've put out, we specify no driver can be, asked to drive when they're, tired or exhausted. If they request that they need time, they're granted that time. There's no waiver in our state executive orders. There's no waivers in any of the safety regulations related to it. The only thing we're talking about is hours of service. And then those can be managed by the individual and by the companies they work for. And when we've done that without incident during the time that we've been doing it. So again, I go back to sometimes when you got a new regulation, you got to ask yourself, what problem are they trying to solve? And in our state, there is no problem. It's they're creating a problem with this regulation, not solving one.
Although other officials in other states have expressed concerns, thus far it appears that you may be the sole governor who's written FMCSA with an objection. Why do you think we haven't heard from other states, even though many of them have issued orders like this?
I can't speak for the other states, but I would think that when I think around the other Great Plains states that are largely rural and have some of the same challenges we do across the Northern Plains, that there would be consensus. Certainly, I think one thing that we'll be doing from our office is reaching out to other governors just to make sure that they've got awareness of this and that it's on their radar, because I would think other like-minded governors would want to support this in their states because of the similar issues. But again, we're particularly sensitive in North Dakota because our industries don't operate unless we've got our trucks are moving and our truck drivers are happy. If we're not making sure that we're taking care of them and giving them a chance to do their jobs, their important jobs that they're doing, then it affects our economy almost instantly. So we're just, I think, keenly aware of how important when this kind of federal overreach shows up, we've got to push back on it.
I'm wondering if you can give us an example of a situation where the shortened time frame would have created a problem there in North Dakota.
Well, I think I certainly gave that before on the relative to, grain drying at harvest time. I mean, we've had a massive blizzard a couple of years ago that came. We still had sugar beets. We had corn. We had soybeans. We had everything still in the field. And this early blizzard that came, wreaked havoc. I think we were talking about billions of dollars of crop that was still in the ground. I mean, the economic damage that would have done to our state, our communities, our farm families would have been massive. And there was just an unprecedented amount of need for propane for drying as we battled our way through that. And that took way more than 14 days to solve that problem. I mean, that was you're talking month and a half to work our way completely out of that early blizzard till the time that harvest got completed. And there weren't, there aren't enough. There are not enough CDL drivers. You can't just say, okay, everybody stand down because the other drivers will pick up the slack. I mean, no one is losing an economic opportunity here. We just literally have a shortage, and we're doing everything we can to try to increase and support the supply through our career and technical education. I mean, we've even got CDL simulators now inside of our criminal justice facilities. So if someone wants to pursue that career, they can be ready to, when they're, ready, done serving their time, they can come out and have all of their simulator off-road work completed ahead of time, and come out and take their test and get their practical work done on the highway and get going. But I mean, we're trying to figure out, be very creative on trying to support the industry, because we've got literally thousands of opportunities open for CDL drivers in our state. So it's a constant battle between labor availability and the demands of our two biggest industries, energy and agriculture, and of course all the other transportation that's going on. We've got the two big interstate highway systems, I-29, I-94, a lot of transcontinental goods coming through our state, and we've got a lot of trucking firms there that do a great business, and all of them are in our whole motor vehicle association. All the truckers in North Dakota stand fully behind the work that we're doing to push for these, maintaining the rule as it is, allowing governors the ability to do the 30-day versus a 14-day waiver.
You sent 2 letters to the agency at this point. Has the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration been in touch with you regarding your letters or the issue overall?
Not with me personally, and not to my knowledge. They have not contacted our office. Okay.
What's your next move if FMCSA does not reconsider the rule?
Well, we'll keep advocating and we'll keep working. I think, again, we'll certainly be reaching out to other governors through governors associations and through our neighboring states to try to make sure people have the awareness. I mean, this is classic, federal government, one size fits all for a nation that's as big and broad and diverse. And, I keep talking about, blizzards during harvest. That's not a problem in Southern California. So, of course, there's other places where they may say this isn't a problem, but we know it's a problem for us, and it's the reason why it's better to have 50 platforms of innovation and have each state have the ability to do these waivers versus the federal government trying to decide that somehow, some way, on any day of the year, across all the different latitudes and longitudes and economies that we have, that somehow they're going to come up with a one-size-fits-all that works for everybody. It rarely works in any industry. It certainly doesn't work in an industry that is highly weather dependent, like trucking is.
Is there anything else you want to add, Governor, or that I didn't ask about you think I should have?
No, I think I just want to, again, close and say that on behalf of all the people that work in transportation in our state, appreciate your advocacy, appreciate your education that you're doing, and appreciate all your listeners that are out there, again, trying to make sure that we just do what makes common sense. It's just let hardworking people do the job that they know they can do and do it well and do it safely. That's what we're doing, and in the process of doing that, protect our communities and our businesses and our ag producers and our energy producers and all the things. I mean, when we're a state that feeds and fuels this country, one of the cornerstones of that is the CDL drivers that are actually doing the work to make sure that goods get to where they need to go. And we respect the work that CDL drivers do. We understand how important it is. I grew up, in a town of 300 people. The only paved road was the state highway through town. Working at the grain elevator growing up, hauled a lot of grain in my life, spent a lot of time, driving truck, hauling soybeans from our little hometown up to Canada and back to the closest soybean plant was up in Manitoba. So I understand how essential it is, the work that the truck drivers do in our country, and grateful for you and grateful to have the opportunity to be on the show with you.
Excellent, Governor. Thank you very much for your time.
Super. Thank you, Mark.
That was Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota speaking about the FMCSA's new rule that limits the length of emergency exemptions from the hours of service to 14 days. Landline Now will be back in a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine VibraTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with VibraTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Welcome back. A career behind the wheel of a truck oftentimes stems from a generational love for trucking. Doug Smith and his family are a true example of that. He has been driving a truck for more than 50 years and is a current OOIDA Life member who sits on the board. I spoke with him recently about the generational side of trucking and how that's played a role in his own family.
Well, we're losing a lot of the generational appeal to it. People don't say, son, when you grow up, I want you to be just like me and do what I do, because the job is so hard, and it's very few of us find a niche that we can be what you'd call very successful at it. Most of us are just making a job and going paycheck to paycheck, and competition kind of screws it down that tight. But there are niches out there, and if you can find what you like to do and somebody pays you well for it, well, you're a lucky man or woman.
Were you the first trucker in your family, or was there?
Well, my dad started this business in 1952 and started me in 1953. And he died when I was 25. He was only 47. And I picked up the yoke from there. My son, I have 3 sons, and one of them is running rock crushers. The middle son has got a tax business, and the third son, his brothers call him my true son. He and I go out and move heavy machines, and he has kind of taken over where I left off as far as, doing jobs, bidding jobs, and getting the work done. And he likes it because it's fun, and we have fun working together. We recently moved a 150,000-pound machine, and it was fun, and we got paid for it. That's the best part.
What is that like to work with your son?
It's special. It's to be able to work with family. It can be a blessing or a curse, and it's been a blessing for me. I've got good kids, and there's always family dynamics, but we get through it. And we all know that we've got each other's back, and we're pushing in the same direction.
Is there anything, when you had kids and you had sons, and did you think, like, I want them to be truckers? Is that something you said?
When my youngest son was 12, the older ones already had their CDLs and were working at it, but their lives went off in little different directions. But the 12-year-old, he was with me on a load of groceries, and at 2 a.m., he looked up at me and said, we've got a full moon and full tanks. And I thought to myself, he gets it. He's loving this, and I'm so happy for him. And then he said, I'm going to bed. I thought he was going to stay up with me and talk, but he just made a left turn and jumped in the sleeper.
You must have a lot of special memories on the road with him.
Yeah, we hauled some building material to a church project in Nauvoo, Illinois. And that's where he got his first behind-the-wheel time. The statute of limitations has expired on this, but I let him drive an hour and a half across Nebraska on the way home until he finally said, I've had enough. But he has always had a feel for the equipment, and he's accident-free, and he's well trusted by a lot of major contractors to move their equipment.
What advice do you feel like you've imparted on him to be so successful?
Honesty. You can only rip off a customer once, and then it's not your customer anymore, and they are hard to get. When you get a customer that just calls you and asks about your availability and not how much it's going to cost, you have earned some serious trust. Don't throw it away.
That was Doug Smith talking about how trucking has been an important part of his and his family's lives. Harrison Smith joins me now. He is one of Doug's sons. Harry, what is one of your first memories of being in a truck with your dad?
Probably my first memories in a truck is going to be going on jobs with guys that he worked with. I guess you could say his drivers. My dad ran a small fleet, so he's the independent driver heritage. So my first memory is probably just being a little kid and listening to my dad say, "Hey, you can go ride with Cliff. Cliff's going to go take you around for a couple of times," because my dad would be in a pickup truck, right? And so that's probably my first earliest memories is being a kid and wanting to ride in a truck so bad that my dad would, choose one of his trusted drivers and let me go ride around with somebody like Cliff for a few rounds. We do dirt hauling. It's a little more cyclical than the typical OIDA member. And so when we say drive a few rounds, you'd ride in circles and haul dirt for a couple hours. And I think those are my earliest memories is getting in a truck and going in circles, and my dad would be there being the boss, and I'd get ride around with a driver, and life was good.
How cool was that as a little kid? That's like every kid's dream, I would think.
I was in heaven. I dreamed about trucks all day. I knew all of our trucks' numbers. I could see our trucks from miles away when I was driving around town, with my mom or my aunt. I'd be like, "Oh, look, there's truck 353." And my mom would have no idea what I was talking about. And I always have had just a mega draw and a keen eye for trucking and trucks. So it was a perfect fit for a little boy that wanted to go and do something cool. I mean, it's hard to get much cooler than that because, trucking, you have a unique opportunity to get young people involved right into the thick of the profession from a young age with no red tape, as opposed to, say, someone working in a mine site or someone working inside of a warehouse. Trucking as a little kid, you just have access right to the Holy Grail right from the get-go. So I took advantage of that as a little kid, and I loved it.
Was there ever a time you decided I'm going to go into trucking, or was that just kind of always the plan?
Oh, I thought I was going to do business management or something, coming up through high school. Oh, I'll go to college and do business management because you think you been brainwashed into needing a college degree and you got to go to college. And then about a year and a half into college, you figure out, it's
not all it's cracked up to be.
The title is something that only people who don't understand how our society and how our culture works care about. And so then at that point, I went into a more of a trade-based college degree, a technology degree in construction management. And I mean, I did finish that, but I never stopped trucking because trucking is how I got through college. And I was like, so it just got me through college and it was awesome. So why would it was a natural fit.
What has your dad taught you about trucking, the job, the industry?
Don't ever go out unprepared because it makes you look like a fool when something goes wrong. Meaning a lot of truckers today are guilty of it. You see trucks that shouldn't be on the road because they're not putting in the time and effort beforehand to ensure that they can complete the job and do it efficiently and safely and make money, whereas they just take risks. And my dad taught me, do not take those risks. There's risks we can control and risks we can't control. A risk we can control is meticulous maintenance and understanding how our trucks work and why they work and how the brakes work and how an air compressor works and how to not get your brakes hot. And if you do get your brakes hot, what you can do. And so those lessons on preparation and preparedness are what, I can take with me in everything that I do. And I always carry a Leatherman on my hip now, and I always have a paper check in my wallet, So there's these little interesting characteristics of my dad that I picked up. I won't say naturally, but I could see. Mm-hmm. My dad is a smart guy. My dad's a very successful guy. I want to emulate him, and the way I can do that is by copying his movement. Mm-hmm. And I wish that more of the world would find a good role model or a good mentor and copy them and emulate them to try and chase the coattails of their success.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have young kids, right?
Yeah, I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and he's almost 2.
Do you hope that they follow in your footsteps, or are you just kind of whatever they want to do?
My little 8-year-old, his name is Ralph. He wants to be a civil engineer, and then he wants to come work at Ralph Smith and help. Ralph Smith is our company where I work. Mm-hmm. He wants to help Ralph Smith company, achieve new successes with his civil engineering degree. And but I think he wants to drive. I know he wants to learn how to truck. My little Greta, my 5-year-old, she has a little office set up down at our shop, at our trucking operation. She has a little office set up under the stairs, and she said that when she's older, she wants to go and work with her aunt in the office. And my little 2-year-old, he's just incessantly obsessed with trucks to a degree that I can't go home for lunch nowadays because it's too hard to leave after he sees my truck, because it just, it turns into tears and truck, daddy, truck. So
how special is it that you get to share this with your dad, like the history of it, but also being involved in OOIDA?
I am the luckiest guy on earth. If there's somebody out there that doesn't like me, I totally understand why. And it's because I feel like I've got the greatest life on earth. And I mean that. So it's a mega blessing every day to be able to work side by side with my dad. And then beyond that, to be able to go and represent the interests of OIDA around the country and in our daily lives with my dad at my side. A lot of people, truckers are their own worst enemy. And a lot of times I avoid the confrontation or the conflict. But that ability for someone like my dad to engage in that conflict and then press people and hold them accountable for what they're trying to say or do, the same way that Jim Johnson would or Todd Spencer, my dad has that innate ability, and I don't have that. So it's amazing to be at my dad's side and watch him have those kind of interactions with people where my dad doesn't back down, because he knows what's right and he knows what's wrong, and he's not going to get pushed around by somebody that wants to inflict their opinion on them because they may be ignorant of the big picture, if you will. So the ability to watch my dad work in the circles that he does with the involvement in OIDA is really special, and I don't take it for granted. I cherish every second that we get to be out there together, whether it's trucking at home and, wearing OIDA on the forefront of what we do on the hat that we wear, or when it's, board meetings in Grain Valley, Missouri. And I'm just the luckiest guy alive. I hope that people have the same amount of enjoyment of life that I get, because I feel really special.
That was Harry Smith talking about life as a truck driver and the joy of a job that's become a way of life for the Smith family. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. The National Coalition on Truck Parking is holding a meeting on Tuesday, and our next guest will be presenting. Bryce Munchen is OIDA's Director of Legislative Affairs, and he joins us on the phone from our nation's capital now to talk about tomorrow's meeting. Bryce, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Scott. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us. For those who may not know and, quite frankly, may not remember, because it has been a little bit since we've last heard from the coalition, tell us what is the National Coalition on Truck Parking, first of all, and who's a part of it, and I suppose what the goal is.
So the National Coalition on Truck Parking, it's a federal working coalition that's housed under and managed by the Federal Highway Administration. And it's made up of pretty much any stakeholders that have an interest in addressing truck parking. So that includes public sector, so state governments, local governments, transportation organizations, freight industry, and again, any other groups that want to work to advance safe truck parking. And you know, I know, and I'll at the outset kind of say this because I know anytime we're talking about like studies, working groups, meetings, truckers and our members can be a little bit skeptical, and certainly we understand that the truck parking shortage is going to be solved by expanding truck parking capacity. But our work as part of this coalition is important, and the coalition has put together some good products in the past that we've used when we talk to lawmakers. So within the last year or two, they put together like a truck parking handbook for states and localities that were interested in building out truck parking. So kind of basically the technical know-how and guidance on how to expand truck parking. They've put together some other documents. Another one I reference frequently, it shows states that have creatively used their right-of-way to expand truck parking. So it is a good way to bring together people who have experience with this, trade ideas, and I do think that the coalition serves a good purpose and an important part of ultimately solving the truck parking shortage.
I'm going to kind of speak maybe on behalf of our listeners who have some of that skepticism out there, and I'll couch it in some optimism in saying that we have seen awareness increase, I believe, in recent years about the truck parking crisis, acknowledgement that something needs to be done with it. Groups like this, obviously helpful when you've got all these groups coming together and talking about the issue and trying to come up with solutions to it. Mm-hmm. That said, and not to be too skeptical here, but I guess it's more of a question than anything, but have we seen progress as a result of this coalition? And if so, what does that look like over the past few years?
Yeah, obviously that's very fair, and that's what we're here to do is make sure we're representing our members and truckers. So we're always keeping that in mind. And I kind of thought about this as this will be the third time since 2020 that I've spoken at a meeting for the National Coalition on Truck Parking. I was kind of looking back at some of my previous notes. And one of the things I did realize is that at least OIDA as an association, we've made some pretty good progress on truck parking at the federal level. And I think the work and some of the documents that I mentioned that came out of this working group have played a part in that. So, back when we first spoke to the group when I first spoke to the group anyway, in 2020, we had just seen introduction of legislation in the House, that Congress. We were still working on getting legislation introduced in the Senate. We were still doing a lot of informational meetings with lawmakers. And since then, getting ready for this meeting tomorrow, what we can look at is we have legislation that's been introduced in the House and Senate. In the House now, the House T&I Committee has approved the bill. We have over 40 co-sponsors on the legislation. Within the last few weeks over on the Senate side, there was an Environment and Public Works hearing where the truck parking bill was front and center when talking about highway safety. And, like I mentioned earlier, some of the questions that have come up when we are talking with lawmakers and their staff, some of the information from this coalition and this working group have been helpful in answering those questions. So, we're not here to tout the coalition itself as as the end all be all, or, we can rest easy knowing that we are talking to another group about truck parking. But I do think it is important to recognize that solving the truck parking shortage and the crisis is not going to happen overnight. Obviously, it hasn't happened overnight, and it's not going to be any one thing that gets it done. It's not going to be speaking to any one group, any one lawmaker. It really is making all of these connections. And another thing to reference, too, a lot of the other people, other groups that are set to present, and some of the other groups that are part of this working group have worked with us, whether it's joining a coalition letter in support of the truck parking legislation on Capitol Hill, or when we look for information for state-specific information, states that have or are participating in this working group have put together really good documents that help to demonstrate the problem. So I kind of view this, and we view this as one part of the puzzle. And certainly it's critically important that we're a part of this conversation, because, if we're not here, if we're not part of this conversation, that means it's, either not going to be happening or it's going to be dominated by somebody else's interests.
Yeah, absolutely. You may have previewed it there in what you just said, but as you mentioned, you've presented and spoken at these meetings before. Can you kind of give us an idea of what you're going to talk about? You talked about the fact that we've got legislation that would seriously put a dent in this problem. Are there other things that you want to make sure you emphasize with the people who are taking part tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sometimes it's difficult when we're so immersed in this issue. You feel like everyone wakes up and thinks about truck parking every day and wants to talk about the issue. But, part of what I want to make sure we do is take a step back and just talk about the legislation and what it would do and why it's important. Obviously, most of the people I would imagine who are listening into this meeting are going to understand the importance of addressing the shortage. But, I'm sure not everyone's really intimately familiar with the truck parking legislation. So part of it will be educational, because we've had meetings where we've presented in the past, and groups will follow up because they're interested in the bill or they're interested in working together. I think part of what I want to convey too is that we are making progress on this, and the work that we're doing and that other committee members are doing is making a difference. So again, it's taking that step back and trying to stay positive about this, because it does feel like a slog when you're doing this year after year. But I think helping to show some of the progress that we've made and showing the importance of this work can help people, remind them that this is important, and maybe just keep thinking about ways that we can move this forward, and maybe what are some other ways that we can collaborate. It's not directly related to this truck parking working group, but one of the groups that we've worked with, for example, is the National League of Cities, and that's not an association we've typically partnered with, but through different meetings, presentations, we became connected through them and realized that there was a shared interest in working on the truck parking shortage. So you just never know who may be listening or who may have an interest with it in the issue, and it's you always got to be ready to try and make use of those opportunities to make a connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in looking back to and kind of preparing for this talk with you, I think the first meeting was in 2017. So when you consider where we were then, and that was before my time, so I'm not quite sure exactly what was talked about there, but I do imagine over the past 6 years, through coalitions like this and through groups and through conversations, that we're moving in the right direction, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And this is certainly one step to that puzzle there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I took a look, and I think in my notes from 2020, we had met with about 180 congressional offices. So consider we've talked nonstop to this issue with lawmakers since then. We know we've broadened our reach. We've seen the bill move through committee, so we know it's having an impact.
Absolutely, yeah, and I keep crossing my fingers that we're going to see some meaningful changes here, and who knows, they could come in 2024. We shall see, we shall hope. And as you mentioned there, the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act is in both the House and the Senate. We've got co-sponsors. Fightingfortruckers.com is the best place to go for people out there listening if they want to make sure their representatives know about this issue. Bryce, pleasure as always. We'll talk to you soon, perhaps after this coalition meeting on Tuesday.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And our time with you is up for today, but Landline.media never sleeps. Get all the latest news there, or wait about 23 hours, and we'll be back right here wherever you may be listening to us. And wherever that is, we thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.